Welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Jon Jones. Jon, welcome, mate.
Well, thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
good. Right, we've got loads to cover, and I've got a real hefty question to fit in at some point. So before we start with
Okay.
that, if you give everyone a bit of an intro as to who you are and what you're up to, please, mate.
What am I up to at the moment? Well, at the moment, I've got my own little company, film production company. We should do various filming for various companies, as well as social media and stuff for mainline baits. And one of my biggest main job is product development for Tracker and
Okay,
Signet.
talk to us a bit about that. What does that involve?
All sorts. Getting involved with manufacturers. It's from basically having ideas, and then moving them straight through from the original idea through to CAD drawings and liaising with manufacturers wherever they are around the world. Obviously, getting samples
Mhm.
back, testing, playing around, tweaking, changing. It's exciting stuff, to be honest. I've been doing it for quite a few years now, but I'm now with Tracker and been with them for five
Right.
years now, so time has flown. So hopefully many more
Oh,
years to
brilliant. So
come.
do you, in terms of that, are you sort of involved with the idea right from the get-go, sort of from scratch?
Yes, yes, we've got some very intelligent, clever guys that work at Tracker. The guys that work in the
Mm.
offices are very clever. Um, the attention to detail. I'm not trying to big them up, but the attention to detail is very impressive, and the way they look at things. So I turn up with an idea, with a
Mhm.
sketch, or with a little, maybe I've made something. They get their heads around it. I try to explain how it works because my mind works completely weird, and then we run from that. And sometimes some of those guys run with the idea. Sometimes they leave it for me to run with
Right.
the
Okay.
idea.
So I mean, how does that idea come about for you? I mean, can you talk us through like some previous products that you've sort of got
Well,
through?
the one that has has been very successful was the if you remember how many years ago now, you're looking at early
Mm.
2000s when the barred framed, I think it was an aqua wasteling came
Right.
out. So the first wasteling with the two twin
Mhm.
bars that came across. Now that was obviously successful from the original like floppy wastelings that we used to have, to a bar
Mm.
version. And having looked at that, when I was working for Rob Hughes at the time, and Rob and Simon Crow and that started Venture
Mhm.
Tackle. Um, I looked at that and I thought, I wonder if we could add floats to it so it would be a short term retaining sling. So basically, it was you put the fish in, obviously, as we do
Mhm.
nowadays, secure it in there, get your camera gig sorted, bring it back to the mat, take a photograph, return the fish. So it was a short term retaining sling. So we made them, tested them, all worked, started selling them, and now, as you can see, everybody's
Mhm.
got them. So that little development, it was a simple development, but it was one of those ones where we really should have put a sub protection on it at the time because we didn't realise how good that
Yeah.
was. Um, so yeah, and there's been many others. Um, when I left working for Rob Hughes, I left and started working for Preston
Mhm.
Innovations, and we set up Avid Carp, and quite a lot of ideas came from that, especially like end tattle bits and pieces that we developed. So yeah, it was exciting times, especially when you can think of an idea, see it through, see the drawings, get the samples back, make changes, tweaks. Yeah, for all those guys out there that are in this position, and that what I do could understand what I'm saying, and it's great when you finally have a product that you've thought of on the shelves and people are using it
Yeah,
and
I bet
buying it.
that's a real rewarding feeling.
I've always thought that everyone's got an
Mhm.
idea from a very small age. Everybody has an idea, um, that can make you lots of money or not not so much, but everyone's got one in there tapped into their
Mhm.
brain somewhere that there is an idea. Um, but if you're not, if you're a normal person to move that on, it's very difficult. When you get in with a company that can throw some money behind the
Mhm.
idea, it's great
Yeah.
because not many people can do that and take that risk. But everyone's got an idea. The amount of emails I used to get, we've got this idea, and it was quite sad really because we had to turn many of them
Mm.
down So we have so many products on go, so many ideas on go. You imagine if somebody sends an email in with an idea that's very similar to something that you've been working on for the past
Mhm.
6 months, and you've read that email, and then a year later your product comes out, and that guy says, "Hold on, I gave you that idea." So it's very difficult because every time an email came in with an idea, I would just say, "Look, before you send me any pictures, I'll have to say I can't take it because we've got so many ideas on the
Yeah,
go. If it's similar, then you're going to be upset and think that we've copied your
yeah, yeah.
your
That's a good
idea."
point. What in?
But we do. There's lots and lots of people sending product ideas all
Yeah,
the
I
time.
can imagine. What's been your best product? Would you say, John?
Uh, Recently, oval
Hmm.
bed. I had an idea quite a few years ago, the oval bed, and I turned up a tracker with tubing and plastic pipes just to try and bring the idea over, and the guys there worked it out. I could have never made that bed chair as good by myself, working with my ideas than what they've done. And it's turned out to be a great success. It was the first sleep system, slightly different oval bed because we wanted to create space in the lumbar area of a
Hmm.
bed where you need it most, so you can roll around easier without banging into the bars of a smaller parallel bed. Um, Tighter at the leg end, at the feet end, because that's great in the winter because the heat is you're not trying to heat
Hmm.
up a bigger
Hmm.
space. Um, yeah, it's a great little.
Nice. Yeah, no, really nice. If we move on, obviously you mentioned you've got a film production company. How did that come about? Have you always been into the photography and sort of videography side of things?
Yes, that was when I started working for Rob Hughes back in
Right.
'99. Um, him and Simon Crow had already produced a couple of videos by then, and it was just a natural progression. Went on to filming him doing that, and going into TV work as well for
Oh, right.
Sky. We had the first carp show on Sky Sports. I think that was like, when was that? 2004,
Hmm.
maybe 4 or 5, or maybe 3. Um, Rob had an idea, and we wanted to get carp fishing onto Sky
Hmm.
Sports. Ali Hamidi actually worked at Sky for a short while back
Right.
then, and it was him that gave us like the way
Yeah.
in, um, gave us a contact, and we were in there, and I ended up filming those, and being the other side of the camera a few
Hmm.
times as well. So that was exciting times, going around filming and traveling around all over the place. So
Oh,
yeah, that was
brilliant.
good.
Did you obviously with that? How did you like initially get into it? I mean, were you sort of keen with the camera way before that, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I've always liked
Mm.
photography, um, so it's just a natural progression from there. So yeah, it was something that I like doing, and it, I'm still
Yeah,
doing it now.
yeah. It's getting really popular as well now, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I mean, with YouTube and social
Mm.
media nowadays, it's great to see that normal anglers filming what they're
Hmm.
doing. If everyone did it, it was brilliant. It's great for if they represent anybody. It's great for them, but it's also really difficult. I don't think people realise how difficult it is to film
Yeah,
yourself. It's great holding a camera and filming someone and telling them what to do, but you put that camera in front of you on your own and try and film it exactly how you would do if you were the cameraman. Very
yeah,
difficult.
yeah. A lot of work has to go
Um,
into it, doesn't it?
it is, and so well done to all these guys that are filming themselves, and some of them producing some really good um,
Mm.
footage. So yeah, long may it
Yeah,
live. Everyone try it. I say every single year I should really get my own channel going and just do
yeah.
vlogs and tackle tips and rig tying and bait tips and so on and so forth. And I say it every single year, and I've said it again this year, and I still haven't.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
time. I think the problem is that I'd want it to be the best I could do, not like, oh, that
Yeah,
will do. Where I should really go for that will
yeah,
do, and get more out there.
yeah. No, rather
To
than
be
going
honest
for
with you, but
perfection.
yeah, yeah, and try and put different camera angles everywhere, and try and get the
Hmm.
light right, and just just use a
Yeah,
phone, 4K on a phone now for
yeah,
video. You know, it's
yeah. No,
great.
definitely. Let's move on to a bit about your own fishing. I mean, how's that going? Where'd you go? Are you sort of a syndicate member or anything?
At the moment, there's a little syndicate that I fish in Nottingham, well,
Hmm.
Derbyshire area, which got nice, well, quite a few 40 pounders in there now, which is nice.
Mm.
Um, but it's a shame that none of us can fish at the
Yeah, how's
moment.
that going for you
But
with the lockdown?
it's it's frustrating. I'm sticking to all the guidelines that have issued out. You hear so many different rumours. This is happening. This is
Mm.
happening. Um, but it is frustrating because I film people
Hmm.
as well, and we can't get out
Yeah,
filming. So I'm eager to get out, get some new product filming done, and you
mm.
can't. I'm liaising with everyone, saying, right, as soon as we have the lockdown, tell me what dates you got free. We'll get out there, do it. But yeah, it's hard at the moment. I think we all want to be out there, and I can understand a lot of the guys complaining that if you can queue up outside a supermarket for an hour, um, why not sit round a lake with nobody around you for 24
Yeah,
hours? It's not up to us, though, is it? There's a lot more factors involved, and Boris will do what he's got to do, and hopefully he'll announce soon that we can go. But until then, we just got to sit around and
yeah.
wait,
No,
haven't we?
definitely. I think it's tomorrow, isn't it? Sunday tomorrow. We're due an update, aren't we? Yeah,
Yes, yes. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that something may happen. But the way that the press and Sky News are saying at the moment, it's going to be very similar to what Wales have
yeah.
announced, and Ireland. It'll be garden centres, and we can go out walking or exercise twice a day as opposed to
Hmm.
once a day.
Yeah,
So you know, it will be what it'll be. But we really do need fishing to be back going, and the tackle shops to be back open again. We need the money coming back into the
yeah.
industry,
No,
don't we?
definitely, mate. Absolutely. And I think that's across all trades and all businesses, isn't it? Like restaurants and everything. I mean, they must be hit so hard.
Yes, and they're going to
Mm.
continue, aren't they, for the next several months, by the
Yeah,
looks of it. And you try and work out how a restaurant is going to serve
yeah,
people. Yeah, I actually try to do it. If you imagine being a waiter or waitress, do you go up to the table? Do you have to leave it next to the table, and the customers have to pick it
yeah.
up? And what are they touching? Are they touching the plates? Are they wearing gloves? Are they wearing masks? It's a
Yeah, I think there's
nightmare.
going to be a lot of
What about
PPE
going
in
to
there.
the toilets? Going to in the restaurant, there's a toilet.
Yeah.
You know, is it one person at a time? It's a
I was
nightmare.
speaking to someone. They were saying about the amount of people you'd get on a bus. I think we were on like a conventional coach. I think it was like something like 5 or 10 if we had to adhere to the spacing because obviously you'd be
Yeah,
dotted diagonally up and down. But yeah, it was next to nothing, which obviously makes it just not a viable way of transport.
no,
No,
no. It's difficult. It's difficult. We all say that we should do this, we should do that, but you've got to look at what does it entail. Thousands of people going
yeah,
fishing, and there will be thousands of people going fishing. How are they
yeah,
getting there? They're all going by vehicle. Are they going to make an extra trip to the supermarkets? Are they going to get more fuel so at the petrol stations? What happens if they
hmm,
break down? So it's
yeah.
awkward.
It is.
You know, I wouldn't want to be
No,
Boris because he's damned if he does, damned if he
absolutely.
doesn't, though,
Yeah,
isn't
and
he?
obviously he's got a way up.
There's always somebody going to
Yeah,
knock him for anything he says.
yeah, definitely. He's got obviously way up the impact on the economy, obviously versus his health
Yeah,
and everything else. Yeah, there's so
yeah,
many moving parts to it, isn't there?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
it's. I
definitely.
know a brewery in sort of local to me in Swindon. They started selling online and delivering. locally.
Right.
So
Okay.
they've got stuff going out the door, and they're they team up with a pizza place that's in their thing, and he's from yesterday just started doing takeaways. But you've got to be a certain distance. They put it on the counter. You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
then come and collect. So it's just
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
around it, isn't it? I think as best as you can.
But do you think these measures are going to be in place now? All these measures till a vaccine?
You'd think it's going to have to be something like that because it's going. Like there could very easily be another spike, couldn't there? In cases,
Yes.
it wouldn't take
What?
much.
Sorry. So, what my biggest fear is that over the next
Mm,
6 weeks, 2 months, people will forget. They're allowed
mm,
out more. Certain things have opened. We're fishing again. Tackle shops are open. Maybe outdoor cafeterias are open because they're outdoor, because outdoor is
hmm
better than
Yeah,
indoor. People forget, because we'll all forget. We'll be in supermarkets. All of a sudden, we go, oh, I forgot. You're standing next to
yeah,
somebody, and that's the problem. Is everyone will forget and become a little bit
hmm
lazy because the drum isn't still
yeah,
beating. Stay at home and all this, and that's when you've got to worry that if it's still out there, it could come
yeah.
back.
I think I heard a few people talking about that Cheltenham Festival, how that should have been
Yeah,
cancelled, and
yeah,
that could have been one of the big sort of spreading causes of it. I think. So you think how many people are
yeah.
crammed in?
That's right. Somebody showed me like an infection chart of
Mm,
Gloucester. Now you don't know. You see these things on social media. You don't know if they're true
mm,
facts or somebody's made
yeah,
them up. But the postcode for Cheltenham Racecourse was basically
mm,
red, and the other areas around it were a slightly lighter shade
mm,
of red. So it basically was saying there's been more infection in that postcode area
yeah,
than anywhere else in
yeah.
Gloucester.
I think I think that someone told me that the pub landlord next to the course, he obviously does a regular thing for Cheltenham Festival. He was open, and
Yeah,
apparently he ended up getting it and dying. So it's
did he?
yeah, strange times indeed. Right, we'll move off doom and
Yes,
gloom. Give us, you got
yes,
any
yes, yes.
funny stories you can share with us?
Funny stories. I think the most of the funny stories were back when I was on Patzel
Right.
Park back in the uh, late 80s and through the 90s. Now, Patzel Park, if those guys that know, the Midlanders will know where Patzel
Mm,
Park is. It's just outside Wolverhampton. At the time, in the 80s, it was the place in the country for a £20
right.
common. If you wanted to catch a £20 common anywhere in the country, you'd got to get yourself on Patzel.
Yeah.
And they were golden, dark brown commons, many of them. And it's so much so that it was, you'd go down south to catch a mirror. That's basically what it was like. So I joined that in about 88. And of course, starting on that syndicate, you've got Rob Ailes was fishing it, Brian Gardner, Sean Harrison, and many other top good
hmm
anglers at the time fishing the lake. And as I'm a John, there was about four Johns that fished the
Right.
lake. And of course, when you turned up, you'd always ask who's on, who's where. And of course, it was John who, and I had at the time a red Escort fan, and I had a pair of red baseball boots.
Right.
Now, they were fashion at the time, apparently. So whenever my name was named, they would say, Red Shoes, Red Van. So, of course, when, if I'm fishing on a particular swim and they say, who's that over there? They go, Red Shoes, Red Van. Then it got shortened to Red Shoes. Then, as my nickname is now Shoes, it's now, that's where my nickname
Right.
came from. So that's one of the questions I do get asked quite a lot is where did Shoes come from? So for those guys that don't know, there's the answer. But on those many trips to Patzel, one of the first memories I have of the guys winding me up was about because it's a church port and there's a church that backs onto the lake with a
hmm
graveyard. Um, they'd say there was a mad monk that walks the fields and the grounds of the lake. Of course, a young a young lad um, was always keeping one eye open at night to make sure the mad monk didn't come. But it was a few years after that that I decided that to play a little bit of trick. As you got to know the anglers on the lake and relaxed and you knew everybody, one of my little tricks was that in the middle of the night, I would sneak out of my swim, down to the next swim, and sometimes if I knew the person really well, it was a cold hand on the face, right? And I would run off in the opposite direction, big circle, double back to where my peg was, my swim, and then from my swim, run back to their swim, reporting the same thing that what had happened to them, that I'd done to them. So I would run in a sweat, going, "Oh my God, you don't know what's happened," and they'd be like, "What? Something's just touched me on the face, like a cold hand touched me on the face," and I've been looking up, and they've gone, "Oh shit, that's just happened to me," and I kept this going for years, absolute years, and people were getting worried that there was something going on, but that leads that particular there it didn't backfire on me. But the one particular time I was on there, it was late December on a Friday night. Nobody was on, full moon. And there's many times on a full, as you know, big bright
Mm.
full moon, you could see a long
Yeah.
way. Of course, the church was there, graveyard and everything. I thought, well, I'm not going up there by myself. I'll fish the bottom point, the road
Yeah.
point. Um, so I fished down there by myself, and obviously the road point itself is a little point sticking out, and there's a pathway to the swim, and that pathway was covered in leaves. So if ever anybody walks up there, you'd hear the sound of footsteps on the
Mm.
leaves. Fishing under a brolly for the middle of winter, frosty, clear sky, fishing under a brolly, and about I'd say 8 o'clock in the evening on a Friday, and I'm surprised nobody else had turned up. I could hear the leaves, the sound of footsteps coming up, the crunch of leaves coming up the path. So as the footsteps stop, I've gone, oi, oi, no answer.
Mm.
Like, oh, hey, up. Who's that? Do you know what I mean? Torch out, jumps out the front of the brolly, nobody there. And I'm there going, where are you? Stop messing about, walking down the track. I've walked up the meadow. I could see there's no cars in the top car park, no cars in the middle car park, no cars in the bottom car park, nobody. So now I'm walking back to the peg, the swim, with my torch, thinking somebody's going to be in sitting on my bed chair. So I've quickly run round the front, nobody there. And it's like, now I couldn't sleep that night. As you can imagine, nobody turned up. Nobody owned up. But strangely enough, that night, about 2:30, little drop back, one of the rods, just a couple of beeps, beep, beep, beep. I thought, well, I'll hit it. It was flat calm, hit it. And it went on to land Billy, which was the only mirror in the lake at £33. And landed that. And mobiles had just come out. So I've got this brick of a
Yeah.
mobile. And phoned a few people up, and they came out, photographed it. So I asked them about, did they turn up last night? No, nobody turned up. So something happened, and it couldn't have been an animal or a fox because me jumping out, you'd have heard it
Yeah.
run off or seen it run off. But there was heavy footsteps through the leaves to the back of me brolly, and when I jumped out, nobody
Hmm.
there.
Weird.
So the Mad Monk. So it must have been the Mad Monk.
God, that is weird. I've never experienced anything like that. The only thing I've had is I was speaking to someone the other day, a badger at the back of the bivvy on Christchurch. That's happened a few times. The
Yes, yeah, they can be noisy,
yeah, like
can't they?
just
Then
you can hear like snorting, looking for food, and you think, Christ, what's that? Initially, but yeah, it's just like you can tell it's a heavy animal, can't you, by the way they walk?
yes, yes, yeah. I remember one. I was fishing in the forest in the woods, and it was for hundreds of acres of land behind you. It was all
Mm.
woodland. Got the lake, and your bivvy was backed onto the woodland. So if you in the middle of the night you looked back into the woods, it was pitch black. You could just see the first row of trees, and everything else was black. Middle of the night, you're hearing twigs snapping. You think, "Oh, somebody's turning up." You jump out the bivvy, you shine a torch, and there were hundreds of pairs of eyes looking back at you. Deer. The deer had come down to the lake for a drink. I'd heard them coming, but shone the torch, and there were just all these eyes glowing, looking back at me. Oh my God. You imagine what you see when all those looking back at
Yeah.
you. No, that's let's just say the change of trousers was needed that night.
God. Where are you fishing at the minute? Or well, obviously not at the minute in lockdown, but where are you when we'll go back out? You we'll be back in your syndicate.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little syndicate water. It's halfway between me and Tracker
Yeah,
Towers, so
perfect.
it's good that we can have meetings down there and a bit of
Oh,
product
nice.
testing as
Yeah,
well. So it's a nice little halfway stop.
yeah. You should definitely do.
I can't really mention it
Yeah,
because it's a
sure.
syndicate and it's publicity ban
Yeah,
and
yeah, of
everything.
course.
So,
Yeah, you should.
but yeah, it's a fantastic, fantastic, well-run fishery, and it's gin
Yeah,
clear. You know, even 15-foot gin
right.
clear, and weedy in places, and the fish are absolutely brilliant. You know, and they're growing so big. When I first joined, you were lucky to have a 20 pounder, and this was only 5 years
Right.
ago. And there's probably 6 or 7 40s
Oh,
now.
yeah. Is it a gravel pit or
So
not?
it's yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, ex gravel pit, absolutely. Like I say, I love the fact that it's gin clear. You can try all sorts of
yeah,
things and test things out, and you get out the boat with the fishery owner and find and just see the fish. The fish swim up to the boat, you know, because he feeds them off the back of the boat. So it does spoil you a little
yeah.
bit, though.
Is it got deep margins? Are margins um worth a shout there?
They're not. They don't drop off mega deep, but you can't really wade. You
Yeah.
know, you couldn't even get a wade a rod length out because you're above your
Right,
chesties.
right. What's your
So,
typical
but it,
style of fishing, John? If you've got like a go-to method, do you like a margin or stalking or out in the middle, bait and weight?
do you know, I used to be two out on a spot, one in the
Hmm.
margin, um, and that was my go-to thing all the time. It was amazing how many times the margin rod would
Hmm.
go first. Um, but now I don't know what it is. It's like three on a
Right.
spot, and I should really go back to two on a spot, one back on its own in
Yeah.
a little corner or in the margins again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the fashion at the moment. It's either Ronnies or solid
Mm.
bags, um, which you know I can understand why people use the Ronnie because it's effective, it's easy to tie, and the other thing about it is it looks
Hmm.
trendy. And I think carp fashion, if the rig doesn't look fashionable, people tend not to use it, even though it might
Yeah, it's
work.
funny, isn't it, how that goes?
Yeah, it's a fashionable thing. If it doesn't look right, um, trendy wise, then people aren't going to use it. But the Ronnie does look
Yeah.
trendy. There's too much metalwork on
Yeah.
it. Personally, it works. You know, so I can't knock it because I've caught quite a few fish
Yeah.
on it. But it's about time that it was tweaked now, or something else comes out. But it's hard because as rigs get better, they get more
Yeah.
efficient, and you know the subtle changes onwards are only
Hmm.
slight because you're never going to have big leaps in rig development. So yeah, maybe that's a question for somebody
Yeah.
else.
Like a riggy one. Have you got any sort of memorable captures other than that one you just talked to us about that you could share? Anything that springs to mind?
um, Memorable captures. The pet from Farlow's was like my first 30
Right.
pounder. Farlow's back then when we used to fish Farlow's, there was only Farlow's and Broadlands open as classed as any method trout
Right.
fishing. So basically, you could go there. They'd put a handful of trout in the lake, and you can turn up and fish for trout any method. So you didn't have to fly fish or whatever. So it was full of carp anglers. Now, going down back then in the early 90s, and you turn up at Farlow's in the close season, and you've got Rob Malin, Steve Briggs, Richard McDonald, the famous five from Rob Malin's books, fishing off the point at Farlow's. It was like it was like a who's who of carp
Right.
fishing at the time. So we kept on going down there, and we'd go in the bar, and he'd have a game of pool. I remember one night we were having a game of pool there, and it was like an honour because we were reading Rob Malin's
Mm.
books, and he would say, "Winner stays on," and we'd play pool with Richard McDonald and Rob Malin. So those times were brilliant. And one particular time, there's four or five of us from the Midlands travelled down to Farlow's, and Um, a couple of them got down early and they went in like Pads Bay at the one time, and I turned up. They've been catching quite a few, and they were really doing
Yeah.
well. And I couldn't get in Pads Bay at the time, so I thought, oh, I'll just go on Pylon Point and just sling a couple out and see what happens. So I'm on Pylon Point, um, slings a couple out, has a screaming take, and it was the pet, Farlow's pet, £32, my first ever um, £30 mirror. It was a leather as well. It was the sought after fish in the
Right.
lake, and I sat on the concrete stump of the pylon, just like in a different land. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that feeling.
We'd come
Yeah.
down, we were fishing that lake with those top quality anglers on, and I more or less fluked out the pet that everyone was after. But it was brilliant back then because clipping up would only just been
Right.
invented or
The
thought
walking
of,
the lines out
and
scenario.
no, there wasn't even walking the lines there because I remember we turned up and Rob Malin was there and he said, "Hey lads, come and have a look at this." And he's fishing off the front face of Farlow's towards the islands, so right off the front where the old calf used to look
Mhm.
towards. And he's casting to the island. He says, "Watch this. Watch how close I can get to this island." So we cast out, and he casts a rod length
Mm.
short, and we didn't know what he did. But the next cast, boom, straight underneath the island, and he was like, he looks back, smiles, and we're like, "Oh, flipping heck, how have you done that?" And he then showed us, says, "You see the clip, your line clip on the spool. You do this, blah blah blah. Blah. Everyone knows how to clip up
Mm.
nowadays." We'd only just turned up, and I looked at my mate, and I went, "Right, come on, let's go and find a swim with an island." And all we did the whole weekend was casting, clipping up to the islands, different parts of the island, underneath the hanging
Yeah.
bushes. So we learnt that day. And when we went back to
Mm.
Patsel, there was no islands at Patsel. There was nothing to clip up to other than your marker
Yeah.
floats. And then we were clipping up to marker floats, and people were looking at us and saying, "How are you getting it that close?" Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it was because of these trips to different parts of the country, different anglers showing you things, you
Yeah.
learnt. It was the same with the stiff hinge rig. When I fished the car park
Right.
lake back in the late 90s, I've with two rods leading up the brolly, and I remember Terry Hearn coming round and saying, "How do you know about that rig?" But what he didn't know was Wayne Dunn, his mate at the time that fished like Raisbury
Mm.
and the car park lake with Terry, fished Patsel.
Right.
And Wayne had told somebody at Patsel, that person had told us, we'd gone down, me and my mate had gone down to the car park lake with this new
Yeah.
rig, thinking this is, no one knows this rig. And Terry's gone, "Well, how did you get that? Because it's come from here." So it went full
Right.
circle. So again, it's amazing that you learn if you go to these different places. If you stay in one place, you don't develop your
Yeah. So
skills.
like true for anything
You've
in
got to go
life,
and
isn't it?
fish. Yeah, you've got to go and fish with the best and watch how they
Yeah.
fish and learn from that. Don't ask too many questions because they might not want to be
Yeah.
answering them.
Yeah.
But just watch what
Yeah.
they
Take
do.
it all in.
And the more you fish, again, the more you fish, the better you become. It's like a tennis
Yeah.
player. I always say that with
Yeah.
tennis player. A tennis player will train 10 hours a day if they
Hmm.
could, you know, and they get better
Yeah.
from it. So if you're out fishing all the time, you will always
Yeah,
get
I
better.
completely agree with that. I'm not like you just get into that routine, don't you? You know everything, where everything
Yes,
is. You put everything in exactly the same places. You just become
yes,
so efficient.
that's it. My days on the church on Birch Grove in the
Mm.
winter, it it started off with like Frank Warwick telling me, "You've got to try this rig out," which was the long shank rig with a kicker and a little bit of shrink tube on the hook on the shank to hold the tear in place. And it was a little little
Mm.
combi rig. So Frank showed me that, and it caught straight away. And then over the years there in that winter syndicate, it was basically I knew when they were going to feed, I knew where they were going to feed, and I knew what they were going to feed on. And it was simple, but it was because I was fishing it regular,
Yeah.
and you could time it when you were going to catch and what bait was going to work. During the day, it was orange. It was orange, mainline pineapple, embuteric
Mm.
acid, little yellow wafters, and at night they were like a dark brown fish
Right.
meal. Couldn't catch on the any sorry, not yellow, orange pineapple
Mm.
wafters. I couldn't catch in the day on brown. I couldn't catch in the night with orange. But when you put the brown at night and the orange in the day, I could
Why is
catch.
that, do you think?
I have not got a clue, but it all started happening, and of course, there's a little funny story about this as well because I was
Mm.
catching. Rob Hughes had come down, and because I was catching, he would go in the next peg, and he hadn't caught, he didn't catch anything. So the next time he came down, I said, "Yeah, here's a few of my hook baits I've made. Try these." He didn't catch, but I did, and he was getting a bit confused, and that happened a few times, and he did eventually find out because I told him the that I was going down 48 hours before fishing, getting some of the lake water and washing out hook
Mm.
baits. But I was giving him the full strength version to see if they worked. So he was doing my testing for me while I was using the washed out version and catching. So yeah, so he basically did my testing. I was catching it, but eventually he did cotton on. Um, but that was brilliant because you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it turned up. I'd caught one. I remember going down and Ian Paul was on, and I said, "Oh, I'll go in the top the swim above you." I think it was the big
Mm.
boards, and I knew a little spot there. Put one of his washed out baits out. 5 minutes later, I think it was 35, 36 pound mirror on the bank. It just happened, that time on a lake. It's just everything clicks
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
works. Believe you me, I've been on its syndicate for a whole year and nothing seems to work, and you're struggling while everyone else is
Yeah.
catching. You just can't get to grips with it, or you can't just work it
Mm.
out. But I think it's purely down to the fact that you need to be there all the time.
Yeah.
All these top anglers around the country, you see a lot of them. They're catching, they're consistently catching, but you don't realise they could have been there for five
Mm.
days. You only see the captures. You don't see the hard times they go through to get that
Yeah.
capture.
Yeah. Definitely.
And a lot of us have only got weekends to spare, and and you hope you can get a good peg on a day ticket fishery when you get down there on a Friday. You hope the fish are going to be there, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You
Yeah.
know,
No. Definitely.
if you can spend more time down there, you will catch more. But we're limited to weekends, and that's why some guys are say not average cast
Mm.
catchers. They can catch what their time allows them
Yeah.
to.
It's being in tune with the water, isn't it?
So
That makes such a big
that's right. Yeah,
difference. You sort of almost
yeah,
know where they'll be before you get there.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And when?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's what's your UK PB, John?
£50 two
Right.
ounces.
Where was that from? What can't you say?
That was from the
Oh yeah.
Avenue. I I've known Rob House for years, and I said to him, I said, I because it's
Yeah.
local, it's only like 25 minutes
Yeah.
away. I said I'd love to get on for a winter, and I'd love to catch a big one. And he says, "Well, we'll sort you out with a winter ticket on there." And I went on there for a winter and had a 50, 48, 46, a 38, and a few others.
Oh,
So yeah, that was a special little winter
yeah.
session. But some of the guys on there, talk about uh, accurate baiting. They would spom and hit the same spot every
Yeah.
time, and it was that precise little baiting that made them
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah. It makes such a
But yeah, it
difference,
was.
doesn't it? Being accurate.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see people catching fish, and because you can always learn from it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the ability of the angler. That angler will have a field day one day. Everyone does. They have a brilliant session, or many brilliant sessions. But other people can learn from that as well and take that. Well, he's done it with that rig, that bait. I'm gonna have a
Yeah.
go. You know.
Yeah. So true.
But we're all there to catch fish. There's no competition. I think everyone. I don't know what it is so much now that you used to get, half a dozen people coming round to see the fish that you've caught, taking
Yeah.
photographs. You don't seem to see that anymore,
Yeah.
unless it's obviously one of the big fish that people are after in the country.
Yeah.
But there's so many of them about nowadays. It was like a big social event. I mean, at Paddle Days, Saturday morning. you'd go around, do the photo shoots, and everyone would wait, fish in the
Mhm.
sacks, and you take it in turns. You go all the way around the lake, and you would photograph the fish, and then come about half past 11, someone would shout over the lake, "Pub," and that was it. We'd all reel in down the pub, and we would celebrate those
Yeah,
fish that those guys had
brilliant.
had. And then you'd come back, a bit worse than where, and sling them out again, and that was
Yeah,
it. Have a bit more of a social on the bank, and that was your
yeah.
weekend.
No, brilliant. Do you are you sort of regularly on call to do fish picks for people?
No, not really. No, I'm doing a lot more match
Right.
fishing filming at the
Yeah.
moment, which is nice because you're learning different aspects of fishing as well from some really good anglers. I'm always asking questions, and they're actually asking me questions as well. What would you do if you? Because these match anglers now are basically carp anglers,
Yeah.
aren't they?
Yeah.
They're just fishing for them with lighter tackle and smaller bits and pieces. Um, but yeah, it's good fun actually filming these match anglers. It's different. I'd like to do a bit more the carp filming,
Yeah.
but at the moment it's the match guys,
Right.
so
And do you obviously do all the editing
good fun.
yourself as well?
Yeah,
So have
yeah.
you been busy doing that in lockdown?
Not really, no, because it's a shame because I filmed something prior to
Mhm.
lockdown, but it's product based, and really, if you brought it out in lockdown, you couldn't buy the product
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's a shame because now it's glorious weather and everything's
Mhm.
green. The footage looks a lot
Yeah.
better. Um, but I'm so eager to get back out and get some filming done. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
No, I bet, mate. Um,
But we're due some bad weather, though, aren't we? We're due
yeah.
some cold
Yeah. It's
snap
going to change, isn't
tomorrow
it?
night.
It's I think lovely today, and I think it's going to be go cooler tomorrow, isn't it? They reckon.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, One question that we sort of ask quite a bit or talk about: what are your views on zigs, and do you use them?
It's something that works brilliant,
Mhm.
but it is something that I should really add a little bit more to my own
Mhm.
armory. I used to be mad surface fisherman. Every opportunity I could
Yeah.
get, I would be having mixers on the surface and catch as many as I
Mhm.
can. That was a Patzel thing again. Going back to Patzel, you learnt so much on there. The surface anglers on Patzel were better, as good as any I've seen. And it was the surface water during the day and tiger nuts and particles at
Right.
night. And they were all out fishing throughout the day on the surface, and you would learn so much. So I picked up that from there, and I don't do it so much now. I think there seems to be a lot more wildlife on lakes
Mhm.
nowadays, um, and there also doesn't seem to be. I think the day ticket people don't seem to bother with surface fishing because I can understand why. If you put a load of mixers out and it blows, they travel down lake, you can't follow them down
Mm.
because obviously it goes through several other people's pegs, doesn't it? If it swims, and some people might get annoyed about it. So you probably don't see surface fishing on day ticket venues so much. Syndicates probably more so, but zigs. Everyone's been fishing
Mhm.
zigs. I think we need to find a, a, a more easier way with the zig floats.
Mhm.
I think there is some ideas that you can make them a little bit better
Right.
to what they are. Um, but yeah, I'm for it. I'm for
Yeah.
zigs. Um, yes, I can understand some fisheries are banning them because they can foul hook
Mhm.
fish in the pecks and so on and so forth. Because the fish will just swim through, not see the
Mhm.
bait, swim through the line, and it pulls the line down. The rig gets in the
Mhm.
peck. Um, but yeah, I've got no objections
Yeah.
to jig fishing. It's like I don't know if you can remember. A lot of people probably remember. Do people remember the what was it called? Beach caster
Yeah.
rig.
Yeah.
Rod up
Yeah.
high, line down, surface
Yeah.
bait. That was devastating
Mm.
rig. Obviously, at the time when it was developed, I think it was developed on Cuttle
Mhm.
Mill. Um, they used a three-way swivel, but then the clever guys on there used a sliding, a running rig on it then, so it was
Mhm.
safe. But the amount of fish that we used to catch on that back in the
Yeah.
80s, hundreds. I mean, Poole Hall, Wolverhampton, everyone used to have a beachcaster rig out, and you would be having a fish probably every 20 minutes. It was that devastating. You don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
It's safe. It's safer than a zig.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but you don't see it. You don't see it used. It's just a. But if people don't know what it is, it's just a means of securing a surface bait to the surface in a fixed position for a lot longer,
Yeah. And
isn't
with a
it?
lot
Really,
without
it's
any line on the water or
that's it.
yeah.
You're basically suspending your rig down to the bait to the surface,
Mm.
yeah, and it worked
I
amazingly.
bet you got some awesome takes
Perfect. But
from
it
it
was
as
all
well, didn't you?
you did, yeah. It was brilliant. Rods would bounce, but once the fish is on, you'd have to frantically wind down because you may have 12 foot of line beneath the
Right.
fish to your lead, and you'd wind down. Then you was in connection. But bear in mind, all you had was a lead, a float, and then your hook
Hmm.
link. So, like a helicopter hook link. So no difference to a zig. A zig could have 12 foot of line on, or it could have a float on with 3 foot line. So you have a lead, a float, and 3 foot of
Hmm.
line to your rig. This only had like 6 inches hook link.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the beach caster is probably that little bit better than a zig.
Yeah.
Strangely
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
might try
Yeah,
it.
definitely. It's like you say, isn't it? Things seem to sort of come in and out of fashion, don't they?
Yes, yes, they do. Yes, you could get all the old rig books, cart books, and that. Have a look at rigs, and rigs have changed names, but they haven't changed that
Hmm.
much. You look at I go through them quite often. You think, well, look at that. They were using that rig in the 80s. You were using that rig in the 80s. Just a different pattern hook or size hook, which is exactly the same, but it's now called something different.
Yeah.
So
Okay. If we,
it's all good.
I've got a question to ask you from our previous guest, and
Okay.
that's: do you think technology, sort of including social media, is now an advantage or a disadvantage in carp fishing?
Personally, um, it's an advantage. It's got to be an advantage. You know, for research, using social media for research is brilliant. Um, you don't have to go through months or years of carp talks to have a look at captures from certain
Hmm.
lakes. So that makes it easier. Um, Finding particular things, any rig that you want to tie now is available on
Yeah.
YouTube. Any bait that you want to find is on YouTube. Any way of using that bait, anything is available nowadays. So learning um, back before social media came out and everything, and all YouTube and so on, you learned from other anglers, which means that spread of learning developed. It went slower,
Mm.
so you had advantages over other people for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you'd have somebody would to come up with an idea. It's on YouTube, it's on social media. Then everyone's trying it the next day. So
Yeah.
I used to be really secret. I mean, back then, we'd put towels over the top of
Yeah.
you'd put your rigs into your butt rings, and you put a towel over the
Mhm.
top to hide what rigs and bait you were using. Now we take a photograph of those rigs and put it on social media and tell everybody what bait rig we're
Yeah.
using. Advantage or not an advantage,
Mm.
um, but information, it's free, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go out and use it. But when it comes to technology, drones.
Yeah. That's what I
Now,
hear as
drones,
well.
yeah, drones are providing everyone's sensible. This is the
Yeah. That.
biggest thing. Common
Yeah. That
sense.
common sense thing is the one, isn't it?
Yeah. Remote control boats, drones, submarines that are coming out, which are available now, um, providing the fishery allow, of
Hmm.
course, providing everyone's using common sense, which is when with a drone you have to stick to the guidelines
Hmm.
anyway. Unfortunately, common sense isn't common in some places. I've got no objections to it, providing common sense again, providing you don't keep flying it over my
Yeah.
swim. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? To check out the features in my
Yeah.
swim, because that's what you don't want. Is if a guy is fishing, he's having a good weekend's sport, and he's catching a few, and that somebody flies a drone over to find out where's his spawn landing. Is there a feature there? Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? You don't want that.
No.
Yes, brilliant. If you can go high enough and you've got a zoom lens on your drone and you can zoom down and it doesn't interfere with the
Yeah.
fishing. But the last thing I want is somebody flying a drone over my swim.
Yeah.
But finding fish, you turn up at Syndicate and you want to fly your drone around to see where the fish are, providing you can fly in that area, and it allows you to, then I've got no objections to
Hmm.
it. Bait boats have been out years and years and years and years and years. Some places allow them, some places don't. I very rarely hear people moaning about bait boats going into anybody else's swims.
Hmm.
They're used abroad quite a lot, so I think they're socially accepted. And I think the people that moan about them are the people that don't want to use them.
Yeah.
You know, I've got one, I don't use it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have used it in the past, and I've disguised it as a goose. But that's another
I was going to
story.
come on to that. Any stroke pulling stories?
Me, never. There was the
Yeah.
goose, um, but I ordered some Canadian goose dummies for
Yeah.
these shooting
Yeah.
decoy dummies. It was perfect size for one of those little wave runner shuttle bait boats that I
Yeah.
got, and it fit across it
Right.
perfectly. So just twilight, you send it out, you mask all the lights
Yeah.
out, you send it out, and honestly, it looks like a goose going across the lake.
Did you have anything attack it or anything like that?
No, nobody attacked it. Nobody shot at it. Um, and I've still got it, and it's one in the locker for
Yeah.
whenever. Stroke pulling wise, again, probably the only one you should deal with at Patzel is that you only used to have two rods, and of
Yeah.
course, you couldn't use three. You couldn't use three anyway. EA rules were you couldn't use
Yeah.
three, but we did. Rod holdalls laying down next to your rods with a broken rod inside, but it was fishing, stuff like that. Yeah, yeah, the stroke pulling. Yes, it's if you can get away with it, do it. I think most of the top carp anglers in the country do a bit of stroke pulling
Yeah.
to catch fish. I think it's part and parcel. You just got to do that little bit more to get that
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah.
I think everyone does it.
Yeah. Nice. Have you got a question we can ask our next guest, please, John?
I think rig wise, I was talking about rig evolution and Ronnie. Do people think what's the next rig? It's a difficult one to think what's coming next. Is the Ronnie here for a long, long time, or is there is there something special going to come out or is it something simple, or is it something more
Yeah.
complicated? What's the next rig? What's the next method
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said,
to catch
obviously
fish?
going back through the old ones, they've all sort of been done, but just tweaked, haven't they? So
Yeah.
you're saying, will
Yes.
it be like
Yes.
a revolutionary, something that we've never seen before? It's a hard one, isn't it? Like you
Yeah.
say, to know.
Yeah. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, but it'll come from some clever
Hmm.
guy who's fishing quite a lot,
Hmm.
and it'll be something that they'll have adapted something to suit that particular fishery to catch those the way those fish will
Yeah.
feed. Um, and it'll be a makeup of
Hmm.
something. It may be a return to the history books and pick something from there and tweak it.
Yeah.
You know, make it a little bit more
Hmm.
2020. Um, so yeah, it'll
Yeah.
come. Hooks are getting. How much sharper can hooks
Yeah.
get? Straight out the packet now, they're as sharp as
Mm.
ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
it's
It's getting to that point, isn't there? Of, yeah. Can it be pushed any further? I suppose. Yeah,
exactly,
sharper, maybe a
exactly.
little bit stronger, as well as retaining that absolute
Yeah,
sharpness.
I think there's lots and lots of new tackle ideas out there. tattle developments. You can always develop something. You see something, you think, oh, if you did this to it, you could always make it a little bit better. That will carry on. But the makeup of rigs, we'll see. There are so many of them, and they all
Yeah,
work. Some better than others.
yeah, it's
But,
down to
yeah,
application, I suppose, as well, isn't it? For suiting that particular rig to that
yeah,
feed-in scenario, that lake bed.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. All right, John, we'll wrap up there, mate. Just one more thing before you
Okay,
go.
mate.
Can you draw me a carp in 60 seconds and then video it and just send it to me? Not right now, just at some point. I'm doing like a little fun competition during lockdown.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, as I said before, the bar isn't particularly high, so don't worry about that.
No problem.
Awesome. Brilliant. John, thank you very much, mate.
No, thank you for
Okay.
having me. It's been a
Take
pleasure.
care.
And you, see ya.